you so much.
All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks for being here. I don't know how your commute was this morning. Mine was quite challenging. The express lane came to a complete stop, so I paid $5 to sit in traffic like everybody else this morning. That's rare. I think that's the second time since the express lane on the north side is open that I've been in it when it was at a complete stop like everyone else. So challenging day, but we're glad to be here today, and we want to spend our time as wisely as possible. So we're gonna start very briefly by just having the members who are here take just a moment to introduce themselves. So Sushma, if we could begin with you. What's your mic number? 24. Okay, there you go.
This one? Oh, I think it's on. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone on the committee. My name is Sushma Barakoti, and I'm the Executive Director at the Refugee Women's Network. I came to the United States as an immigrant to do my master's in social work 21 years ago, and made the United States my home. And I live here with my family. My whole family is here, and work with immigrants and refugees every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushma. We're glad you're here. Representative Causa.
You get it eventually. Good morning, everyone. My name is Angelica Causa. I'm the state representative for House District 50 Johns Creek, which is one of the most diverse House districts in Georgia, representing a lot of the Asian community. I myself am an immigrant from Germany, came to the United States in 1997, and nationalized, I think, in 2011, and here I am. So I want to thank the chairman for bringing this committee, and think this is very important work. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Fry.
Hey, I'm Spencer Fry, representing House District 118, that's Athens, Georgia, and I just want to say thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing this issue up and getting me on the committee. I appreciate the work that you've done. We've worked together, sat next to each other for going on 9 years now. And
Well, it seems like 9. It's only been 7, but yeah.
Seems like forever, actually. I was trying to be nice, but I appreciate the work that you've done in the House, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Fry. And we have with us today from the Department of Research and House Budget Research Office, Morgan Hall. She'll be assisting us today. I'm Wes Cantrell. I'm the representative from the House District 22, which is primarily eastern Cherokee County, a little bit of Forsyth, and a little bit of North Fulton County, and honored to get to chair this study committee. And the man with the best timing on the planet, Chairman Mike Chokas. If you'd take just a moment to introduce yourself.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Chokas, Chairman of Small Business Development, and a member of Chairman Cantrell's Study Committee, and looking forward to hearing what's going on today. Thank you very much. I enjoy being here.
Thank you, Chairman Chokas. If you've not been in one of our committee meetings previous, we run a fairly informal, casual type of a meeting. The purpose of our study committee is to identify any barriers that are inhibiting foreign-born Georgians from being able to pursue their dreams, to own businesses, to have meaningful employment, all of the above. So that's what we've been studying for the past 2 meetings. This will be our final meeting, and then we'll come with recommendations, either some policy adjustments or legislative ideas to address some of the concerns that have been uncovered as we have heard from people from our state. So today we're going to begin with a panel discussion. It's going to be moderated by Austin Hackney, who's from the Home Builders Association of Georgia. And I'll ask our members just to, I guess you're going to have to share the microphone at the table here. And Austin, if you'll be at the podium. And our members of our panel here, if you would just go ahead and make your way up to this table area here in the front. And like I said, we'll keep it pretty informal. Try that microphone, Austin, see if it's working.
Testing.
Okay. And then test that mic for me, make sure it's working.
Test
All right,
us.
perfect. All right, Austin, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the study committee. Good morning. My name's Austin Hackney. I work for the Home Builders Association of Georgia. We're a trade organization for home builder companies around the state with about 3,500 members across 23 different local home builders associations. And our members are residential contractors, but also build single-family homes, multifamily homes. Members are associated with the industry, so could be tradesmen, plumbers, electricians, or could be mortgage lenders or insurance agents. So we try and represent the whole spectrum of residential construction in the state of Georgia, and so I'm happy to be here and talk about this important issue. We're a highly regulated industry, and there are a lot of challenges out there, and so appreciate the opportunity to discuss some of those challenges and to talk about what the global workforce can do for the construction industry in the state of Georgia. I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves as we begin.
Luke Keller. I represent Tecton Career Training. We're a nonprofit located in Clarkston, Georgia, most diverse square mile in America. And we primarily focus on certified construction trade training for the community, as well as coding web development.
Could you repeat your name, because you're not on this list I have in
Yeah,
front of
I'm
me.
stepping in for Amun, who's actually one of our graduates. He'll be here hopefully shortly.
Okay.
But Luke Keller.
Luke. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Luke. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melissa Ramirez. I'm an Associate Program Director at Corners Outreach. While our focus has been primarily educational for the past nearly 10 years, we are launching a workforce development side, which is our Workforce Academy. We are trying to steer our young generations into vocational training as well. That aligns really well with the construction industry.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. It's a little intimidating. I feel like I'm in a court room testifying for something. But my name is Rafael Villegas. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Hispanic Construction Association. And we're a nonprofit, membership-based organization for 10 years, been helping the small and medium-sized Hispanic-owned construction businesses across the state of Georgia receive educational resources and also help them and connect with government entities, corporations, and large and small general contractors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists, for that introduction. And Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, when I advocate for housing at the state capitol on behalf of the Home Builders Association, I like to talk about the American dream and what home ownership can mean to the American dream, and how a family can buy their own home and potentially pull themselves out of a bad situation. And home ownership is really one of the key components to the American dream, but it's not the only one. And I think another component of the American dream that our industry represents is that it's a unique opportunity for a person to start at the bottom and pull themselves all the way up to the top. And what I mean by that is, I think this industry is unique in that you can be an unskilled laborer on a construction job site and learn a skill and take that skill and start a business and have some success with that business and start another business and really grow, the economics of your own personal situation in a way that not every industry offers. So we're proud of what the residential construction industry can do for not just homeowners, but individuals who want to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and follow the American dream. But there are some barriers, and that's one thing that we're here to talk about today. And so my first question for the panelists would be, very broadly, what do you see as the biggest barriers to the growth of the construction industry in the state of Georgia? Rafael, if we could start with you.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. I think the industry has been awakening to the fact that this has been a long-term issue. both on the commercial and the residential side. And I know that for 10 years, major trade associations have been working from different angles. But I think part of the problem is that we need to come together and not attack this with one single solution, because he doesn't have a single solution. There's many angles and optics to this, and you can go all the way to helping the new generations understand and bring back that pride in the trades. That's one thing that some organizations have been doing for a while, in the training and going to high schools and getting that pride back. There are other solutions, that might not be entirely the solution. We work with different consuls in Latin America, consulates in El Salvador, Mexico. They have great programs to bring H-2B workers. But there are some things we need to fix for that program. So again, we got isolated efforts, isolated solutions, and whoever's working on one, I think we need to come together and try to build, a master plan for this, because it's getting worse, and we all feel it. Even the homeowner feels it when they buy a house. So it's no longer the materials. It's been a steady problem for more than a decade, for sure. So.
Thank you, everybody. So something that I've experienced in my work with our families at Corners Outreach is the lack of awareness of just how fruitful a career in construction can be. A lot of the times, the American dream involves going to college and getting these careers, but there is this vocational pathway that seems to almost be looked at as a lesser option or as a backup plan. But what we're trying to do not only is encourage our students to go into their college dream if that's what they want, but a little bit of an anecdotal story. I had a student who wanted to be an architect so badly, and that's all he wanted. And when he found out what architecture was, he was just like, no, this isn't it. I want to build things. He didn't even know that you could go and get certified for being a construction worker. All that he knew was, well, if my parents do it, I'll just go and help my uncle or my dad. And he didn't know that he could get certified to build on that upward mobility. If his dad couldn't own the business, why couldn't he get the tools? He was born here. He can access the education. There are technical programs all around and free programs. I mean, if we even look at Tecton, there are opportunities to collaborate in the community. And I think that there's a lack of awareness of vocational training isn't a backup option. It can actually be a pathway towards growth, which then if you want to become an architect, sure, if you want to become an engineer, great, but you have to start working in that industry first. And it almost seems like the construction industry is more of the parents' jobs and something that the kids are looking at as, I don't want to be that, right? So if we find a way to educate them and show them that that is a pathway, that they can actually build those things, that's actually one barrier that we can eliminate, so that they look at this not as a I failed or I dropped out and I had to go back, but rather something that they work towards.
I think for Tecton, what we've seen, generally most of the people who have come through our program have been in the country. This has changed in the last 5-6 years or so, but generally they were here less than 2 years. English, was always a second, third, fourth language for most of them. And what we would see is when they would come, they would generally get stuck in some sort of decent job, but nothing with upward mobility. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity as we increase the numbers of refugees to capture that significant number that comes in, that a decent number of refugees early on in their resettlement, to help them understand that there are opportunities beyond just putting widgets together all day, that there's incredible opportunities in construction if we could catch them early on to give them the English, but then the skills kind of for that next step.
Thank you, panelists. From the Home Builders Association standpoint, there are a lot of factors that represent barriers to growth in the industry. This year in particular, we saw materials pricing and availability go crazy, and that's something that our industry has struggled to keep up with, and it's it's happened to every industry across the board, so we're certainly not unique there. But workforce development is another big factor that's a barrier to growth in the construction industry, and specifically for our global workforce. For the panelists, what do you see are barriers specific to the global workforce being utilized here in the state of Georgia, and what could we do to enhance those opportunities for that workforce.
Well, going back to mapping, the different sources of workforce. We have obviously, U.S. born folks in trade. We have first generation, second generation, third generation, and then we have folks coming from different parts. I think with the construction industry, the Latino community, I think it's fair to say that it's the largest of the immigrant force that it's associated with the industry. So when we map out all the different sources and we look at the global talent, we say, well, we got an opportunity here. Instead of trying to confront and make it a political thing, we have to make sure that we do this right, that if people are coming in or want to come in, that we create the pathway for that to happen in a safe way. As I said before, I mentioned a couple of things about some of the programs that exist to bring qualified labor. And that's a turnkey operation for many of these countries in Latin America. I mean, Mexico, El Salvador, Nicaragua. I mean, we work with the consulates here, and they have the workforce ready to come and work here for a period of time, go through the actual formal pipeline, that then in the long run, that can become something else. But I think there's a lot of challenges with these programs. The caps that exist they don't really help the industry. I mean, the numbers that we need are way beyond that capacity. Of course, I'm not suggesting that's the only solution, but talking about the global talent, that would be one of the things we could improve. So,
Can I ask a question? The caps that you're talking about, are those federal caps or are those state caps?
yeah, these are caps. I don't have the figures right now as far as how many visas are what's the cap of visas.
Those are federal.
Those are, yeah, well, it's part of the immigration borders protection. So yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess, again, from my perspective, it seems from Corner's perspective, a lot of the times the parents have that limited ability to grow, so their kids don't see a growth that they would aspire to. A lot of the times it's just dad is construction worker for the whole time that they are conscious of, and they don't see that they can become something greater. And I think the younger generations have that itch to grow. We're always looking for promotions. We're always looking for an opportunity to buy our own house, if not build it. But unfortunately, because of the need for survival rather than that career exploration that a lot of our kids face, they don't even get to think of, okay, can I go to college or get the training? They just have to survive. So at 16, it's almost like there's pressure to drop out the moment they can to help mom and dad and get food on the table. And I think that gets in the way for them to pursue that education, that growth. And if we go a little deeper, not just in construction, but all the pillars that involve building a house, building a commercial, establishing a commercial building, plumbers and electricians, if they don't even get to construction, when they get to those specialized things where they have to get certified, they probably can't get transportation to their facilities. They probably can't get their parents can't take them either. And so probably transportation, I would believe, is another barrier. And it's just the opportunity for our younger folks and their parents to access these work sites and these opportunities, not just for work, but also for training.
To reiterate Melissa's point, we see the same thing within the refugee community in Clarkston. Oftentimes they sit kind of in a survival type of mindset. It translates down their family. They get a job and they just work their tails off. I mean, harder working than most people I've ever met. The relationships we've developed specifically with like the unions have been incredibly helpful around earn and learn opportunities. Providing them income, additionally being able to upskill them while earning the income has been very successful. And we've seen multiple students come through our program, enter the unions, graduate 3 or 4 times faster than most individuals, earning multiple, sometimes 6 figures, depending on where they end up in the U.S. So.
Thank you, panelists. My last question for you today is about solutions, and we talked about the issues that are out there, and we talked about how we could address some of those issues. But this study committee is here to come up with solutions to the problems, and so I want to ask you if there are any state level solutions that you guys have considered in your work, and what do you see the state of Georgia being able to do to encourage our global workforce to be more successful here in Georgia?
Yeah, well, I believe there's a lot of help out there, community organizations, trade associations, chambers of commerce. We got a lot of them, and they all do a great job putting out resources and reaching out to the community. And sometimes our relationship to different government entities varies. Some are more evolved in some of the things related to communications, bilingual resources and things like that. So I think as we continue to push education, we actually have to understand also that now in Georgia we have 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we had this the pioneers of the construction industry in the Hispanic community were building their businesses. So now we have second generation taking charge, which is a whole different mentality. So we got to understand all those levels of mentality and involvement in the construction industry, so that we can actually provide resources for them. And as I said at the beginning, part of it is what we're saying here about the education and the pride of the construction industry, and the misleading mentality that is just something to put aside because I want to have certain status, when in fact if you become a really successful plumber, come on, you could be making way more than somebody graduating from business administration. So I think part of the solution is just keep coming together, gathering resources rather than competing, and then working closer with government to really ease the process. When it comes to minority certifications, we are doing a lot of work in that regard. We are doing a lot of training. We work with the City of Atlanta, we work with Gwinnett County, Atlanta Housing Authority, MARTA, and with all of them, what we're trying to do is increase that participation, and also allow these companies to educate their employees and to bring more to the table, bring more workers, and bring them that pride. Those that are already in the trades, they feel it, but we need the younger generation to be part of it. So.
Thank you so much. Another opportunity is something that I've noticed in Gwinnett, and it's the schools are already implementing these construction or these vocational pathways, but there's not enough awareness in the overall community. So definitely spreading more awareness of that and facilitating just access to them. Again, as he was mentioning so clearly, it's just changing that mindset that it's not a backup plan, but it is an opportunity. I 100% hear you when you say a business administration major wouldn't make as much as a plumber. And I didn't learn that until I was trying to figure out different paths for our students. So definitely approaching it through that way. Another opportunity that we can see is just incentivizing those private and public collaborations, making sure that those who are supporting these efforts get a benefit out of it, not just employees, not just upping their workforce, but definitely finding that they're contributing to the state's economy. So finding a way to incentivize these partnerships between the private, nonprofit, and public sectors. Definitely think that's another option. And unfortunately, I blanked out on my third, but awareness for sure, and changing the narrative, allowing more people to access and the publicity for these vocational programs so that they can move up in their educational path.
All right. Thank you so much, and I apologize for.
Why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself to us?
Yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. My name is Amun Khan. I'm originally from Afghanistan. I work as a construction manager right now. Currently, I went through a program, long-term project, when I was introduced to construction field. I used to be an interpreter. So that's what I was best at. But then I was introduced to construction field. From the bottom, I started as a maintenance guy and stepping up to get where I'm at today and managing many guys in the field. So sorry I was delayed actually, so I didn't get the whole question because of the traffic. But and one important thing about the construction and the field that we are right now challenging is finding people to work in the construction fields. It's really hard. As she was mentioning, trade schools that provide the programs for people to learn about the constructions, to get in the construction field is very important in an entire state. It will bring the economy up, and it will help us to have a workforce to complete our tasks on time, and we could be able to. We are delayed these days in any projects we work on because we cannot find enough construction people or contractors to work. Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, I remembered what I was thinking about earlier. So I learned in our last discussion where I was able to attend, there are ESL programs that are technical. And I think that that is a huge opportunity that we can tap into, because a lot of our families, they speak enough to get by, but if they also get empowered by learning the technical language of their industry, that can help them advance so much more. That can give them leadership opportunities. So really applying more of those efforts to teach our workers in general, men and women, the technical language in English. I think that that would also help a lot. So promoting those programs and also efforts to diversify. I personally work with one of our students who is a young lady, and she does not want to do anything else except construction. And her family has tried to steer her in different directions, but it's, again, awareness and changing these narratives. If she really wants to, we were able to connect her with a program to certify her for free. And now her parents are a little bit more okay with it because they see that Corners is backing her up in this effort. But if we can also just work towards diversifying this field, both in gender and background and all of those things, I think that's also a really great opportunity. But empowering through language is also a really good opportunity to build new leaders in this industry too.
Great. Well, I want to thank our panel members for being here today. Would you guys be open to answering a few questions from committee members if they have them? Okay, Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Khan, I'm absolutely intrigued by your story. If you could elaborate on the being an interpreter, I guess you came to the United States after that, and you went through a program that enabled you to eventually get to a construction manager. Could you kind of give us a little timeline and some more details? Because that's a very pertinent situation in our national dialogue right now.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I started, I used to do work for a defense training system, and I've been in many locations training soldiers to send in Afghanistan. And as a culture advisor, teach them the culture of the Afghan people, what war was going on, and to be safe and to come back home safe to their family and to keep people of Afghanistan safe. Then got married in 2013 and didn't want to travel. My job required a lot of traveling, so I didn't want to travel anymore. And then I meet Mr. Keller. So he told me about the Lantern Project. And I said, I'm really interested. I'm a kind of handyman, and I know how to fix stuff. So I went through a 6-month program. I learned a lot of stuff by being in the program. And once I learned in the program, they referred me to a job. So I got my first job in construction, and I started working in the construction. And I enjoyed actually by doing, being in the construction field and working with my hands on. And that's what I enjoy in doing the job. And then it was a better opportunity for me to come up to work as a maintenance and get it was a salary job, so which would have helped my new family to grow. And I take it. I say, you know what, I'm taking this. I didn't know a lot about fixing dishwashers or ACs, but I started learning every day. YouTube was my best friend, and another sources, I just educate myself on a daily basis to make sure I know what I'm doing. So I was really quickly recognized by the company. They give me through some other programs to be qualified and certified and to become a construction manager. And over 5 years now, I've been managing construction. Thank you.
Representative Causa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for sharing all your experiences. What I'm hearing is that one of the barriers you are facing, or we all are facing, is a stigmatization about like that it's not cool to get into the construction business, into these vocational. So one incentive that's coming up is in my mind, is like, what actually can you make when you start? And when you grow, I mean, there was mentioning that as a plumber, you can make more than someone who has an MBA and works in some administrative job. So, and how can we advertise this more to give people the pathway? This is actually an option. And I'm saying this as a representative from a district where the only pathway the kids are hearing is you need to become a doctor or a lawyer or some academic person, but how can we fight that stigma that is there that is actually not helpful?
I will say, well, my time in corners, and I have to be clear about that, but our kids are so impressionable. And all they need sometimes is just somebody that's a little older than them, that looks like them and says, this is how much you can make. Because I'm 28 years old. But when I found out that an underwater welder makes $300,000, if not more, a year, I was shocked. And when we tell our kids this, they're like, "Whoa, what? This is amazing! Like, I want to go and do that now." And it sounds a little silly, but it's that relational part of my job that can also allow me to get into their minds a little and just understand that if they just know how far they can come, they love to work with their hands. It's almost like they want that, and it's listening sometimes in class that is what deters them from advancing. Their reading levels, unfortunately, are so behind for other reasons, right? Like educational minds. I know that y'all already know a lot of barriers in that, and a lot of our kids are from minority backgrounds. Most of them are. So when you tell them, hey, you just got to work hard and you get to work with your hands and you can make this much money, you can see it. Their minds just like, I can do this for my mom and dad. I can do, like, I can travel. So many opportunities that, at least in our younger pool, they're impressionable. And if we get this knowledge out there for them and show them, these are your avenues, this is what you can do. Ignore what society says. If mom and dad are telling you, don't be a construction worker, let's show them the opportunities. And Corners in our Workforce Academy is actually working towards a 3-tiered approach, which is the student, the industry leader, and the parents. Because in our work through education, we get to not only help and tutor them, but we also get to talk to the parents and build that relationship and that trust. So when it comes to bringing them opportunities, we can say, hey, like, they're backed up. We can support them, and we wouldn't put your son or daughter in an industry that wouldn't be helpful for all of you as a family. So our mission stays true, but it's that relational component that can also help eliminate that stigma, is our hope, at least.
I think we have the right pieces of the puzzle, and as I said before, a lot of organizations have been working on this, Corners Outreach being one of them. I know the Home Builders Association is interested in this. The commercial trade associations like the AGC and the ABCs and CEFCA, they've all been working with this, but I think we need to come together in a more strategic plane and put this information out with the help of maybe public resources, come into a coalition and do a massive campaign and work our way to the masses, because it's there, you know, the information is there. And it's appealing, and not only that. I mean, we shouldn't look at it only as yes, you can make a lot of money as a construction worker, but there's a path. There's a path that can take you to be your own business owner, in all this. So it's amazing what we can do. We got the right pieces. I think we need to come together to the table and make it happen.
Susma, did you have a question? Go ahead. There you go.
A good question. I totally agree, and thank you so much for enlightening us with all these resources out there. Working in a nonprofit and belonging to a coalition of refugee and immigrant serving agencies, sometimes the information about vocational training, and other trainings and resources out there are so scattered. And we talked about mapping. We talked about making it big and making it out in the community. So is there any effort on the part of either nonprofit or industry leaders that putting it together so that we as a small organizations, like nonprofit organizations who are working in the field, can access that information and refer people to?
So our Workforce Academy is set to launch January next year. So we are actually looking for ways to do that with our partners, and it's getting this information out there and what are the steps to take, making sure that we have flow charts, timelines, whatever it is to make it understandable for the workers, for the parents, and for the industries. So that's definitely something we're working on and something that we would love to collaborate. I mean, I think Luke, who's also here, knows we're an open book. He's also said they're an open book, and that kind of collaboration can definitely help us map things out better. But that's something we're working on as well.
All right, Representative Carpenter.
It's more of a comment than a question, but I think maybe a really high quality TikTok video where they're stacking up big $100 bills.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter. Chairman Chokas.
And I will say, again, with our younger audience, that would go far.
Stacking them hundreds up, holding the pop rich. I mean,
You can build your own house off of dollar bills. Imagine $100 bills. Imagine that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I can top that.
No, you can't.
Anyway, we were talking about young people in school and moving forward in a career that's more technical minded. Okay, of the children, we created the dual enrollment intentionally for that. And I was wondering, how successful has that been in y'all's respective communities at bringing the children into and the parents into knowing about these opportunities? And then the second thing I wanted to add was that several years ago, we changed the mission of the technical college to be not only a technical college, but also to serve the community college. So the core curriculum that we are offering now in our technical colleges, which is basically the core that you would get in the university system, you can receive with the HOPE grant, which is free. So I was wondering, is this information out there for the parents, for the students, for the advisors for the young people in the high school? Well, it appears that there may be a disconnect, but those opportunities exist today.
From our families at Corners Outreach, it seems there isn't. And language barrier is a huge component of that, I'm sure. Again, we work predominantly in North DeKalb and in schools in Meadow Creek District and Gwinnett and Shiloh. And although Shiloh's demographic is different than Meadow Creek's, I personally graduated from Berkmar, and I know that they have a construction program. Maxwell is something that they get told about. So the information is there. I think the language barrier and the fact that the parents unfortunately can't be as involved because either they're working such long hours, they don't understand even the educational system here. Yes, the information is there, but it's not received as much as it should be. So at Corners, we are usually approached because they need tutoring. They need to catch up with their reading and math, especially their reading. And so if they can't even read, how are they going to be able to process this information as they get older? And in full disclosure, but a lot of the parents don't even have that reading comprehension. So how can they feed that information to their kids, right? So is adult literacy something else that we need to look into to expose them to these resources? Maybe. The dual enrollment, I've encountered several students who go to Maxwell, so I think it's something that they look forward to because that's the school they get their hands on things. That's the school that they get to work on. So it's there, but it seems it's almost limited because during the orientation sessions, the parents can't attend. When they tell them, hey, you can go to Maxwell, you can go to McClure, you could go to the health sciences, the other vocational paths, it's almost as if their parents had no idea. All they tell them is go to school, not because they don't care or love them. They just don't know. So yes, the information's there, and I think it's a very helpful program. Unfortunately, in our community at Corners, since they already come a few steps behind, it's probably just not as known. We are working more with Meadow Creek, with the schools in our county, to see how we can spread the word out. And again, building that trust. So that is an opportunity that we see. And so if we can keep getting this information out, it should be something that from an early age, even in middle school, is our hope, is that we can start planting that seed of dreaming in those vocational pathways too. Our goal in Workforce Academy is that when they're in middle school in our organization, we can start telling them about the industries so that once they reach that age, they can actually start pursuing it rather than looking at it as a backup plan.
Hey, we're going to have to move along here in a minute, but I will say, all kidding aside, I think Representative Carpenter's hitting on the right note that, because we're hearing a lot about awareness and education. If we're going to be effective at that, we've got to be on the correct platforms where people are, and we've got to do it in a way that's interesting, so kids will enjoy and receive the information in the right way. So I think that's one of my main takeaways from our panel discussion. But we're gonna have one last question of our panel from Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And really, it's a statement, Chairman Chokas, to your point. I think that's a great point. One of the issues that we have is that the technical colleges necessarily have not embraced the trades as much as we would have liked, as far as construction management programs. Gwinnett Tech has an incredible program, okay? Athens Tech, no construction type of program. And so this is something that, although we do provide the Hope Scholarship, we need to make sure that our technical colleges are actually addressing these issues individually as well.
All right, well, thank you, panel. Appreciate you being here. We're going to move along, but thank you so much. We're going to move to our Fireside Chat with no fireside. Hopefully. So Kristen and Sarah, y'all gonna go one at a time? Okay, so it's gonna be more of a conversation. So however y'all wanna set it up, you wanna be at the podium and at the table, that's great.
I think we're gonna need to bring some couches in, a couple of lamps.
I really would like a fireplace. It'd be nice today. Well, thanks all
Go ahead.
for having us. We actually have a surprise. We have an extra panelist with us this morning, Brenton Stein, as well, and he's got a deep background in the tech sector. So, in speaking about STEM today, we have a great small group with Brenton, who is currently with MailChimp and is founder of RefCode, which is a refugee coding, organization. Brenton will explain it more. And then we have Sarah Irvani, who is from the Okabashi Corporation. She is third generation CEO at Okabashi. And I'm going to let each of them give a better explanation of themselves and their background. And before that, I am also part of the STEM community. I'm with the Center for Global Health Innovation, which was formed from Georgia Bio. We're located down the street off of Peachtree, and we focus on global health, global innovation, and the life sciences. So a third of our education is very foundationally STEM. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah first to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background about Okabashi.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Sarah Irvani. I'm a third-generation CEO of Okabashi Brands. The company was started by my grandfather in 1984. In the 1970s, he was actually the largest footwear manufacturer in the Middle East. With the Iranian Revolution, everything got nationalized, and when sort of thinking, what do I do? Well, restart, and he came to the US and came to Beaufort. At that time, about 60% of shoes were being manufactured in the US, and now it's only 1% of shoes. Sort of a few years after starting it, my father took over the organization, and in the 90s, growing up around the dinner table, a lot of the conversation was, why don't you just shut down and move out the factory? And because of his commitment to the team, to our customers, to the quality of just being able to say, we know how people are treated, we care about what we're doing, it's going to be a harder way. We don't know exactly how we'll figure it out, but we will, and we'll keep our manufacturing here, and we'll keep our team whole, and we'll grow our team. And so he sort of figured that out through a number of ways, and about 5 years ago, I took over the company. And I think that the company is a testament to the way that people can come to the country and really adopt all the best practices and care for it and face enormous sort of headwinds and just persevere with values. I think within the company itself, we really focus on the job training and upwards development. Many of our managers who, manage 50 plus people have really started at third shift temp work and really work their way up. So I think that even within our organization, really put an emphasis on creating opportunity for everyone. So that's a little bit more about my background and what we're doing at Okabashi.
Thank you for having me here today. My name is Brenton Strine, and I am a software engineer at MailChimp. And I'm also the founder and director of RefCode. And I appreciate the hesitation around describing what kind of organization RefCode is, because the temptation is to call RefCode a code school or code boot camp. And we do teach refugees to code. But I would describe RefCode as an organization that introduces refugees and immigrants to the career opportunity that is software engineering, and then supports them. Supports them in a community, with a community and other programs to help them actually start their careers. And believe it or not, it's a bigger challenge, I think, is helping them connect to those first career jobs than getting them qualified. And I hope I'll talk a little bit more about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved being able to listen to the construction panel that was before us, and there was a lot of focus on that training aspect, which is absolutely an important side. It's that technical side. And there seemed to be a lot of focus as well on more second and third generation families. So today we'll focus with this panel a little bit more on the first generations, or the immigrants that are coming directly here, especially those that do possess a skill set, but also those that don't possess a skill set, because that's really the most simple thing that we found in our conversation to teach. It's beyond that. So if you think back to a few years ago, there was a natural disaster, I believe it was in Haiti, and a company delivered tons of water to Haiti, and it was left there on the runway. So here's this issue, they need water. Okay, we got water. That's our technical skill set. But how do we get that water and connect the water to the place that's needed? And that is, how do we connect our employees to the actual jobs and careers? And so that's what we want to focus a little bit on today. And this is where I'll turn it back over to you, Brenton, because you understand that. So you want to take over and talk a little bit about going beyond the technical skill set?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think a good example to talk about would be a particular woman who went through our program. I actually didn't talk to her to get permission to use her name, but I'll just say that she's from Ethiopia. And she didn't have a background in technology, but she came to RefCode and went through our introductory class, which is more of a discernment class that gives information not just on the technicals of what a career in software engineering would look like, but also the full range of professional skills, which, as you know, there's a lot of skills beyond just the technical. Communication, collaboration, I could go on. We've developed an entire matrix of skills, actually. And after going through our program, she was interested in finding a job, but wasn't making much headway. And then she went on and actually went to school and got a master's degree in computer science. And so now she actually outranks me in education. And I'm looking up to her and asking her questions technical questions about some of the stuff that I'm doing. And yet still, she's unable to find work. And I work at MailChimp, and I know that there's huge demand for skilled software engineers. And so this is a little bit ironic that there's huge demand and here's supply, but there's not a connection happening. It's that water sitting on the runway. And so what ended up working for this woman was I was able to get her connected to an apprenticeship where she had the opportunity to gain real on-the-job experience. And what that did was it didn't necessarily qualify her, but it proved that she has the qualifications, because employers could look at that apprenticeship and see that she was creating real software at a real company, and most importantly, collaborating and communicating and practicing all of those on-the-job skills that she had learned at RefCode, because we focus on teaching those things. And only after that was she able to find her first job, and she's now, I'm proud to say, she has a compensation of over 6 figures.
Absolutely amazing. And so, out of curiosity, was her apprenticeship where she's employed now, or that gave her the experience to open other doors?
Her apprenticeship was actually all online, and it was through a program in North Carolina. So it was separate, and this was an interesting apprenticeship because it didn't have a fixed amount of time, and so she could kind of work there for a while. It's also interesting in that it did not pay a normal full salary, which often apprenticeships do. It just paid a stipend, and she happened to be in the correct circumstances where she was able to work at this apprenticeship on only a stipend's pay for about a year to gain that experience. Many would not have been able to do that just because you can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Apprenticeships have such a deep value from so many angles. So you think about the value to the apprentice, and that they're immersed in a scenario and learning the soft skills just because you have to, because you're there. So learning how to work with people, learning the new vocabulary. Think about even when you travel, you see signs and you remember those signs and you learn a few different pieces of vocabulary. For me, it's the menus. I always learn all the food at first. But then there's also the value to the employer side as well, because they get to test out the waters, if you will, of a potential employee. So in my role, I work with the CDC quite a bit, and they have a lot of fellowship programs as well as internship programs, and their hiring rate is 90% and higher from those fellowships and internships. I also work with the technical colleges who have the biotechnology programs. They have 100% hiring rate after completing their internships, and 90% or so are going directly into the jobs where they interned. And then the rest that's that door opening. It's that experience that's necessary. So it is that sort of stigma of not having the experience, right? Maybe not stigma, but what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the experience or the education, and you need both. So how do we address this? How do we lower the anxiety level of employers to be able to give people a chance? And so we were thinking, money talks in that, and there's always tax incentives. What if there was some sort of attachment to the tax incentives to offer an apprenticeship program or an internship program? And Sarah has at Okabashi, she mentioned that they really build up through the ranks, so people can come in entry level and build themselves or get on the job training, which is super valuable and closely related to apprenticeships and internships. So how do we standardize that? And we think about the German apprenticeship model, and we're in the US and we can't just take something and slap it in this country, but how do we build that awareness and adapt it to something that will work for us? So Sarah, can you talk a little bit about how someone comes in? You mentioned your third shift workers that then are trained on the job and kind of brought through the ranks, and now you have people who are managing groups of 50 people or more?
So it's interesting to understand all of the resources that there are in Georgia. You know, I've sort of come into the company and sort of had various different sources of information. You know, we work in Gwinnett, so Partnership Gwinnett, for example, has been incredibly helpful to learn from. You also have other trade associations like Next Generation Manufacturing, which are really helpful. I find that if you're a proactive company, there is a lot to learn about. You've got the technical college system, you've got the credits like the on-the-job training, you've got the retraining. But I think that one really needs to be proactive in engaging the infrastructure that there is there and to be able to learn it. In terms of the standardization of the apprenticeship program, you know, quite a bit of research, you know, we've discovered about the registered apprenticeship programs, but in terms of what it entails and which different organizations on the student side as well, there's not necessarily sort of the go-to resources and the clarity, and I think that the education around that could perhaps reach a broader range of people than it currently is. Our on-the-job training is, you know, for those specific roles, and I know that there are programs like Quick Start as well, which do a fantastic job, but it's interesting to sort of, how do you marry up the company-specific programs and then also the registered apprenticeship programs and other formal ones. Ours have been more informal.
Mm-hmm. And then Brenton, with your work at Ref Code, how is it, what's the difficulty level in landing relationships or partnerships with companies who are willing to offer apprenticeships to your group of students?
Yeah, I would say there's a huge amount of interest and desire in connecting with programs like Ref Code. I don't have any problems setting up meetings with CEOs, having these conversations, and there's a lot of interest, but there's a lot of questions around what does an apprenticeship actually mean. I think that it kind of, in some people's minds, has something to do with sword making in medieval Europe. And it hasn't quite landed as this innovative tool that it is to connect qualified people to meaningful work. And I think that another big part of it is that software companies have a high desire for hiring senior level software engineers. And there's not a lot of software companies that are looking for junior level software engineers. And by the way, junior level is not an entry level position. It usually requires years of experience to become a junior software engineer. And so hiring at an apprentice level is even below that. And the business sense of it is a little bit harder to convince people of that. And that's where I struggle the most in selling the idea of an apprenticeship.
I think that it's quite interesting what you say about the language of junior, and I probably geek out about language a bit too much, but I do think that when one thinks about a lot of the credits and a lot of the infrastructure that is there and is existing, it isn't necessarily, there aren't many places where it's explicitly tied to the global talent opportunity as well. And so how do we use language and sort of to connect these groups? And I think for, you know, smaller and medium-sized businesses to be able to say, okay, this does apply, and that sort of level of a fear factor of trying a different way of engaging the talent pools is significantly reduced.
And Brenton, with your apprenticeship program, do you have a curriculum developed that you're able to present to the companies? Is that why they're so eager to participate?
So I want to be clear. We actually haven't. RefCode has not run an apprenticeship. I've participated in some apprenticeships through MailChimp, and this is something I'm passionate about. And we are developing a plan to run apprenticeships through RefCode. And so I've been having those conversations. But yes, so I actually think that for most companies, it wouldn't be a good idea to rely entirely on the company to develop their own apprenticeship, because apprenticeships take care to craft, and it's more than just an internship where you can hire somebody without a real plan and just have them around. You need to have a program that teaches them the important skills, not just the technical skills again, but the whole range of professional skills. There should be mentorships, there should be community support. So there's a lot to an apprenticeship, and the way that RefCode is planning on going about this, and I've seen this done with other successful software engineering apprenticeships specifically is what I'm talking about, is with a program that kind of creates the apprenticeship and then connects with the company and makes it easy for them to say yes. They have to allocate some resources, some mentors, some funds to pay the apprentices. But beyond that, a lot of the thought around how to craft the apprenticeship to be educational and training in a professional sense, not just an academic sense, can be handled by an organization that knows what they're doing.
And everything I've read about this it's really a triangle of partnerships between industry, government, and community to make sure that it works. And what I'm really hearing it now is that it's happening in pockets. So it can happen, and those are our models to go off of at this point, and then share that and build awareness. That awareness has been a little bit of a theme today, I think, and a paradigm shift of there are so many pathways to a career, whether it is internships or apprenticeships or something there experiential, or if it's a traditional college degree. But it's not just on the person that's traveling that path, it's from the companies as well to accept different educational pathways. It's interesting. So again, I work with the technical colleges, and there are such a level of technical college students who already have a bachelor's degree, and they're going back to get the skill set, the technical skill set. And then I also work with folks who are highly, highly educated, and they're unable to get their foot in the door with a PhD because they don't have experience. So as Sarah and Brenton and I were talking earlier this week, we realized it just keeps coming back to we've got to get the experience as part of their educational experience. So I'd like to open it up to questions for you all.
Sorry, Representative Carpenter, we'll start with you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Just this is a real quick question, just trying to understand the software industry and the coding industry. Do you feel like companies have set this bar of only looking for senior level, making sure that junior level have all this work experience, but yet they outsource the lower level stuff maybe out of the country, and there's no pipeline to backfill all that, and there's going to be a huge issue moving forward? And obviously there already is, because you read online all the time that we don't have enough software folks. We're having to import folks in. And to me, that appears to be what the issue is, right, is that we've not done a good job filling that pipeline because we've decided as a country to look outside the country first, and then we dried the pipeline up. Is that a fair assessment?
Thank you for that question. I'm not sure that I completely know the answer to that. There's clearly a problem in the pipeline. I'm not sure the exact source of it, but most of what you described sounds exactly spot on to me. And I think maybe my sense of it as not somebody who's a hiring person in software, but as a contributor, is that companies just don't really know how to train the talent in a way that they can trust that it'll be worth the investment. And that may be part of why it gets outsourced, like you said.
It kind of comes back to that awareness piece again, but on the side of employers also, to understand what programs exist. So we talked about dual enrollment. What employers, are they aware of the different high schools that offer dual enrollment in their industry sector? And what a student graduating with a potential certification, a lot of the pathways have an end of pathway certification exam, but is that recognized? For example, the biotechnology end of pathway exam is not recognized currently by our hiring employers. In Georgia, there are other certifications that are recognized in Florida and North Carolina and in Massachusetts. But so just taking a look at those end of pathway exams and making sure, are they valid? Are they still up to date? Is this the right certification to use? And then making sure that industry is aware of them and seeing if they feel that it's valid, because really that's where it comes from.
I'd like to tell a joke, if I can. What do you call a doctor that graduated last in their class? Doctor. Yeah. If you graduate and meet the qualifications of a medical doctor, you are a doctor. And nothing like that exists for software because it's too new of a field. And if it did exist, it would become out of date within a year or two. So what the industry leans on instead of certifications or degrees or diplomas is experience. And that creates a paradox of you need to have experience to get experience. And that missing rung from the ladder, people have to get in, they have to fill that in some imaginative way, and not everybody has the connections to make that happen.
All right, Representative Causa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I'm hearing is that we need more, or there is a need for more standardized process in education for our STEM or vocational fields. And there was, we talked about very formalized ways. You mentioned the German apprenticeship program, which I'm a little bit familiar with, which is highly, highly standardized and has in Europe and in Germany very. When you have it finished, everybody knows what it means across industries. We don't have something comparable here. So my question is, what are more standardized pathways in not just STEM, but in most vocational or trades help us to fill the workforce gap, and how will that benefit our global workforce we are trying to address here in this committee?
I'll step in. Go ahead. Okay. So again, it kind of starts with those who are hiring and being open to understanding that there's more to consider than a 4-year degree. And once employers understand that and say, we understand, we won't require a 4-year degree, but it could be that or experience or this combination of certifications. Then the educational system follows and says, all right, well then if this is the standard set that's going to be accepted by employers, how can we build this into our program? And then there's this direct impact on the community, because think about, how many of us might still be paying college loans? If that can be avoided, there's a direct impact on the economy that more money is going to be spent because more money is being earned.
Yes, and I would just add on from the employer perspective, anything that helps us more quickly understand perhaps what a global background, a non-traditional background as well, it's just easier to move that hiring process along, and especially if you're, trying to hire many people at once, I think that it definitely provides that clarity through the standardization as well.
And there are some areas that have adopted that, especially in the mechatronics industry, for example, to help with more advanced or specialized manufacturing that have programs like Rockwell Automotive that have that set program, and they're great ones to go off of to develop out into other sectors.
Okay, thank you. Our last question for this time around will be from Chairman Chokas.
Thank you, Chairman Cantrell. Very interesting, y'all's presentation or fireside chat. One of the things I'm kind of curious about is in the different industries, how engaged are y'all with either your own HR people or other HR people on how they can recruit and either reach out to the schools or reach out to labor force? How engaged are y'all with the HR people in y'all's specific industries on how to meet these needs?
I think with what we've seen in the last 2 years within, availability of talent and how that within manufacturing specifically, that's what I can speak best to. I am, on a daily basis engaged with our HR department, and out of all of the peer companies that I've talked to, it's equally the same. I've seen a number of sort of round tables of HR leaders within manufacturing coming together. Our partnership Gwinnett, again, Next Gen Manufacturing, they've all done great jobs of bringing them together because this has become a really material challenge. And so a lot of best practices are being shared, I would say considerably more than 2 years ago.
I'll answer that at least in the software industry, it's recruiters, not HR. And any software engineer gets many unsolicited contacts, phone calls, emails, LinkedIn requests on a weekly basis, if not daily. And it's very annoying, actually, but we're very high in demand, and that's why. And I frequently talk to them and ask them, would you be interested in hiring some of these amazing, highly qualified people that have come through my program? And it always comes back to experience, which is endlessly frustrating for me because I know how qualified they are, but experience is the only thing that they can look to that guarantees that, or at least they think guarantees that there is that qualification, because there's no certification that can prove otherwise.
Well, thank you to our panel. Appreciate your time today very much. We're going to move on to global talent in healthcare industry. So I'm going to ask those folks leading that discussion to come at this time. And as they're coming, I'm going to invite Renee, if you want to introduce yourself real briefly. What microphone number are you? There you go.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for being late. We had a launch of a new product line, and I had to be there this morning around 7:30. And of course, traffic coming into the city wasn't very favorable this morning. I'm Renee Diaz, President and CEO of Diaz Foods. We're a family-owned company. Started with grocery stores in 1967, right in Midtown. And today we have distribution centers in New Jersey, Manassas, Virginia, and Atlanta, delivering to about 29 states products from all over the world. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. And Representative Carpenter, I think you didn't get a chance, in case somebody doesn't know you.
Representative Carpenter, District 4, which is the city of Dalton in the south end of Whitfield County, heavily manufacturing area and a real diverse community. So this is obviously something near and dear to my heart.
Thank you, sir. I had knee replacement surgery a few weeks ago, and I'm going to get up and take a quick walk to straighten my leg out for a few minutes. Representative Fry is going to step in if anything's needed, but go ahead and begin your presentation.
Yeah, my name is Andy Miller. I'm editor-CEO of Georgia Health News, and I've been reporting on healthcare in the state for decades now, and I've never been in this kind of position where I'm on the other end of the microphone addressing legislators. Is usually the other way around. So forgive my awkwardness here, but it's an important issue. We did a series of stories at Georgia Health News 2 or 3 years ago about the number of foreign-born physicians in our state, and it came at a time when there was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment going around, and we found that probably 17% or so of our physicians are born in another country. And it tracks basically the national average. And we focused, one of the stories focused on an India-born physician who was the only physician in Stewart County. And he said that 20 physicians had come and gone during his tenure there, but he was the only one left. And so it's an important issue in the current climate, because COVID, as you know, has a horrific death toll and a horrific infection toll. But one thing it also is doing, it's creating workforce shortages that are growing worse even by the day. And so we've got a couple panelists that are going to talk about that and some obstacles to having more foreign-born clinicians, whether it's a doctor or nurse or other technicians, to bring them to Georgia. And Pierre Luigi Mancini is with the Multicultural Development Institute and is a member of a Georgia Behavioral Health Planning and Advisory Council. And Dr. Gulshan Harji is in Clarkston with the Clarkston Community Health Center. So Pierre Luigi, you want to start with what's going on with workforce these days?
Thank you so much, Andy. Good morning, everybody. My first words were going to be thank you, Mr. Chair, but thank you, Mr. Chair Filling, for having this committee here. My name is Pierre Luigi Mancini. I'm a psychologist by training and trade. The last 4 years, I have been working nationally in dealing with the workforce development and the workforce barriers in behavioral health. So you'll hear a lot from me. I'm very biased to the behavioral health workforce that we all need. We've seen all the statistics from the last 18, 20 months, 38% increase in anxiety, 47% increase in depression, suicidality. And this affects our workforce in the state of Georgia, and is something I've been working on in Georgia for about 20 years. So I successfully had a multilingual clinic in Norcross where we were able to serve people in English, Spanish, or Portuguese. We developed our own workforce, over 40 clinicians that were bilingual, helped them achieve licensing in the state of Georgia. So it gave us the opportunity to know that this can be done. And the exciting part about this is that we get to build it, because it doesn't exist. So this is a foundation to build this workforce that we don't have in behavioral health. You know, some of the numbers that, and I won't repeat them because I think they're in your packet, but there are some that are pretty significant. I'm sure you've heard in the state of Georgia, we have over 1 million foreign-born individuals. But we also know that about 47% of them report they're still learning English. You know, people forget that it takes 3 to 7 years to master a new language. So to ask someone to wait 3 to 7 years to talk to me about your depression or that you want to kill yourself, it's not realistic, right? So linguistic access becomes the biggest barrier for individuals to receive services and have that opportunity, which is the challenge, is the opportunity to have a good life. But if we don't have this infrastructure, the individuals won't have that opportunity. So barriers are same as many for the general population, right? For behavioral health, there is cost, there is lack of insurance, there are not enough providers. There are many counties in the state of Georgia that don't have a single counselor at any level of counselor. So there are a couple of things that I like to focus on when I talk about workforce development. It's not just the fact that you're hiring someone or bringing in someone that speaks another language fluently and that has the education, the training, and the experience to provide the clinical services, but you also have to support that individual the same way you support all other clinicians, with bilingual supervision, with trainings about the cultural barriers and the cultural aspects that the clients are going to be presenting. We and all of it, you know, unfortunately, people miss the point when they want to deviate from the fact that It's a human being. It's a person that's in front of you that is having these struggles, and we're all familiar with the struggles. We're all familiar with the behavioral health struggles today. And behavioral health, just for clarification, is mental health and substance use disorder. You know, during COVID, we had 500% increase in alcohol sales. We've seen laws being changed so you can have alcohol brought to your home. You know, so alcohol is a very important aspect of this because we're trying to medicate because there is nowhere to go. We have language lines that can maybe save lives, provide us some kind of emergency information, but not ongoing. And we have interpreters. In the state of Georgia, interpreters don't have to be certified except for the courts. Any one of us can print a business card that says we're an interpreter, and there's nowhere for us to check on that. So we have to make sure that we do have the full workforce. And when I talk about the workforce I want to make sure that the continuum, the entire spectrum, right, from the highest levels in behavioral health, highest levels of education and training, psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed clinicians, all the way down to a new workforce that's called certified peers. These are people in recovery from addiction or from mental illness who are trained to talk to other people who are trying to get in recovery from addiction or mental illness. And that is the fastest way to get linguistic and cultural services to a community until we build those clinicians that need to provide the services. I think I'll stop there, if that's okay. And
Dr. Harji, talk about what the workforce shortages and what's going on with COVID.
So thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman and the committee, I am grateful for this opportunity to present to you, but also to in a timely manner address this situation. The shortage of healthcare providers did not need COVID to tell us that the situation is real. When I arrived here 40 years ago, we were already talking about the shortage of physicians at that time. I entered Morehouse School of Medicine by attrition. I arrived during the Iranian embargo. I was a student in Iran. And Morehouse was a part solution to address the shortage of physicians. Well, how do you address shortage of physicians and providers? You can increase class sizes. That is possibility, and we've done a good job. We created licenses for healthcare extenders, and we've done a good job of that. But there are other issues that we need to talk about is the investment that is required to create a doctor. And I will talk about a few resolutions that I authored at the Medical Association of Georgia that were not received with any enthusiasm. But the investment is significant. I have a daughter in med school right now. It takes $100,000 a year clear to support a student in medical school. You're talking about $400,000 to create an MD, and that is not acceptable. One of the resolutions I authored that got zero enthusiasm was to shrink the curriculum of medical school to 6 years. In other words, a student comes out of med school, of high school, and if they are committed to be a doctor, they should be allowed to have a combined degree, a bachelor's degree and an MD in 6 years, rather than having to go to college for 4 years and then go to med school for 4 years. Well, what happens is the students come out sooner and they don't have the debt of college. Let me tell you, I'm 68 years old. That's not a secret. Everybody knows that. But I spent half my life trying to be a doctor, and I didn't need to be. The experience of going to college, doing research, trying to fluff up your resume is not necessary. If you have somebody who is dedicated, wants to go to med school, we should not have to put them through all these other experiences. And to say the least, that this narrative of a shortage of physician is an old narrative, and we've lost a lot of time. It was in 2011 I authored, among many resolutions, there were a few resolutions that I authored. One was to shrink the medical school curriculum to 6 years. Did not go through, 0. The other was the license for an assistant physician. And I think it is still valid today. From 2011 to 2021, this was a lost opportunity. We lost 10 years, and we lost the opportunity of creating a new license for an assistant physician. It did not stay on the floor for more than 3 minutes, literally. But what happened was other states ran with the idea. Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, they took the idea and they tweaked it in many different ways. They created a license for an assisted physician, and they are doing fine. And what happened is many of our foreign physicians who were looking to enter into residency programs in the state of Georgia immediately left to these 3 states. And afterwards, other states also tweaked the idea, and they created a new license for the assistant physician. And this is, let me say, congratulations for picking up this subject today, but let us not lose the momentum. There are thousands, and I wish I could give you any numbers. I don't know where the numbers are. There are thousands of foreign medical graduates in this country that are wanting to get in the workforce. There are so many hurdles. The process of getting certification of this exam, that exam, this exam, that exam, it costs thousands of dollars. You've got somebody coming from another country, just the value of the dollar, they don't have that kind of money in their pocket. And they have families they are supporting. To have to put somebody from a foreign country who's significantly overqualified, and to not to, I don't mean to downgrade or demeanor the expertise of a healthcare extender. Nurse practitioners and PAs are phenomenal. I could have not practiced for 30 years without them. But certainly an assistant physician or physician from a foreign country is definitely more qualified than a nurse practitioner and PA, and has a lot more to offer to our country and our citizens. We are almost 2,000 physicians short in the state of Georgia. And throughout the United States, probably 50, 60,000 physicians short. How are you going to create that many physicians? There is not that revenue, and how many are there? 60,000 people out there that want that investment of 400,000. We have to create tuition forgiveness for these students to go in, and students who are interested in going to med school. Look at 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, and they're going crazy, and they're saying, I can't do that. And so let's create ways where it makes exciting for somebody who is looking to go to med school, and make it fun for them. Okay, so yes, we do have a significant shortage of physicians, and especially rural. And this assistant physician, the way the resolution was authored, is that a foreign physician comes into the picture by working with a board-certified physician in rural Georgia for whatever, couple of years, to give them the experience of healthcare in the United States, so that they can learn the prescriptions, they can learn the system, and in 2 years, be qualified either to go back and do a mini residency, or they can be given a assistant physician license where they can continue to work as assistant physicians under a certified practitioner. But it is up to us to create that license. It is entirely up to us to create that license. And I think it is very, very doable. And at Clarkston Community Health Center, we have so many requests for these foreign medical graduates who want to help us, who want to see patients, who want to volunteer, but certainly because they're not certified, they cannot see patients. But what we allow them to do is that they can scribe for a volunteer attending so that they do not touch the patient. They go through HIPAA training, but we do not let them examine the patient, but they work with an attending physician and they scribe the notes. And it is a beautiful, it works beautifully. It's good for us, it's good for the patients, it's good for the attending who is seeing the patients, and it is great for this foreign medical graduate who's trying to figure out how they're going to work into the workforce in the United States. But I'm sorry I went over my time, and I thank you.
Dr. Mancini, you want to talk more about obstacles as well currently?
Yes, thank you so much. And you know, I'm also an immigrant. You know, people forget because I used to have an accent, but I wanted to expand on that fact. There are many immigrants who are trained in their home countries. They have their degrees. They are practicing clinical work. But when they move here, they start facing all these barriers. So, and there is a precedent. In 2002, I actually got some of you guys to help me write a bill. And we wrote a bill for foreign clinicians. It died in committee because people didn't get it. I think it was too soon. But what it was is, if you can validate somebody's education, somebody's training, somebody's experience, which can be done, it's not that difficult. I was proposing you give them a 2-year temporary license to work in a facility so they can learn the American system. Not everyone follows the American system of healthcare and behavioral health. They can learn the terminology of behavioral health. And then they can sit for their full license exam like everybody else, right? I think we can still do that today. So if you guys are interested, I'll send it over. We also have barriers when we have, so I tend to submit unsolicited proposals. So I send one to the governor, I send one to the Department of Behavioral Health. I think it's time for Georgia to have an office or a division of cultural and linguistic responsiveness, similar to what they did with the Division for Deaf Services. And this division will be able to navigate how do we develop this bilingual, bicultural workforce. You know, there are more than 10 of the top 10 foreign languages spoken in the state of Georgia. They're huge numbers. And you've heard before Vietnamese, Korean, Arabic, even German. I mean, there are pockets in Georgia where we have communities and they don't have access. Unless you're fluent in English, there's no access. So I think that Office of Division. Loan forgiveness. I think if you're a bilingual, bicultural clinician or physician and you're working in a rural area where there is no one, then maybe you should be allowed to have a break on your debt, your $400,000. You know, for behavioral health is not that much, but still, you know, these kids are graduating with $120,000 in debt. The Secretary of State, right, the licensing office, relaxing some of those rules. Right now, if you're a licensed clinician in Alabama, Georgia gives you reciprocity. But if you're a licensed clinician in Florida, Georgia doesn't. Georgia is very difficult for reciprocity. So I think that relaxing some of those rules will also help us increase. And in this case, not just bilingual, but in general, we also have 6,000 shortage of clinicians in the state of Georgia, 246 in the country, 246,000. How are we gonna make them? They're not enough in the pipeline. You know, behavioral health during COVID gave us great opportunities, right? Another, besides delivering alcohol to your home, we opened telehealth across states, right? That was forbidden before. Now we have clinicians that can see patients in other states, right? So, but that also created a huge demand. So we have clinicians that can't see anybody because they're full. And then we have others that burned out and are leaving the profession. Compassion fatigue is something that is really hurting our profession right now. The last one I'll say is the mandatory training for the cultural and linguistically appropriate services standards, the class standards. There are 10 states that require mandatory training of those standards for healthcare. 10 states that have pending legislations. Georgia does not mandate it. We've actually tried 3 times and it never made it out of committee either. So I think that those are low-hanging fruits. These are things we can implement in order to promote existing organizations to open the door and begin serving individuals in their service areas. That right now in Georgia, there are 500,000 individuals with limited English proficiency that have no access to behavioral health services unless they become fluent in English. Thanks.
Dr. Harji.
One other item of mention, one of the resolutions I had proposed at the Medical Association of Georgia was to relax the immigration issues for foreign medical graduates, which again was not met with enthusiasm. But these are the hurdles that immigrant physicians face. And I think there is an opportunity for us to explore, the possibility of bringing or encouraging some of our foreign physicians who are in the country, who are looking to get into the workforce, is to bring them into the equation.
What obstacles do they specifically face? You mentioned the costs. There are some costs and licensing issues, correct?
Exactly. The licensing is expensive. Some of these examinations cost $3,500, $1,000, and they have to have some kind of preparatory course in order to become familiar with our drugs, because drugs in the British system have different names. Drugs in the Indian system have different names to what we have. We call them here. Zantac is something else over there. And so, they need some preparatory courses that will allow them to become familiar with just the test-taking issue is a skill. They can be extremely knowledgeable. They are very good clinicians. Many of them are already overqualified. They've already practiced in their countries successfully. But taking a test of a multiple choice can be of an issue. And so there are funds that they need to prepare them for these examinations. So those are some of the hurdles. And then, of course, housing. When they come here, where do they stay? I mean, my garage apartment was like a hotel suite for any foreign graduate that contacted me and wanted to come to Clarkston and had a place to stay. When I sold my house, that was one thing I really miss, is the garage apartment. But over my career of 30 years, I have tried to empower, whatever it is, I've tried to empower people who want to come into healthcare. That is my passion. My passion is to see patients. And my whole life has been chasing my dream to become a physician. And pardon me for being so emotional today. Coming from a village in Tanzania to be addressing an esteemed group of people here on most powerful place in the state of Georgia is an honor for me. And I want to thank this country for the opportunity of a great education I received. I came to this country with 6 months to becoming stateless, and had no documents to prove that I had already started med school in Iran. And if it was not for Dr. Louis Sullivan, who believed me and believed that what I was telling him was true, that he asked me to go take step 1, I passed it, and he brought me into the second year of Morehouse School of Medicine. It was a sheer stroke of luck that I entered by attrition in the second year. My plan B was to be a flight attendant because I could mix a few drinks. I spoke 6 languages and I could do CPR. And I came real close to signing up with Eastern Airline. But fate had me to continue to chase my dream. And when I interviewed with Dr. Sullivan, he said, now you know what our mission is. Our mission is to serve the underserved. And I promised him, and that's what I did. Clarkston Community Health Center is my promise to Dr. Sullivan. I sold my practice prematurely so that I could do this and give back to society and be able to say thank you to this great nation. And I'm thinking that when you bring these foreign physicians into this country, that they will turn out to be very loyal. They will deliver, they will serve, and they will do it with great passion and love. And if you go into rural areas, check out and see, look at the names of the people that are serving in rural areas, and you will see who they are. Because nobody wants to go to rural, but these are the people who, due to whatever their immigration status or whatever it is, they will set up shop, they will do whatever it is it takes to serve. And that's what they are here for, and that's what I'm here for. This is my 7th year pro bono at the Clarkston Community Health Center. Thank you.
Hey, we're running short on time, but thank you so much, Dr. Harji and Dr. Mancini. I'm very interested in, you mentioned, I may have missed it when I was out in the hallway, but you mentioned several times resolutions. Was that to the Georgia General Assembly?
That's correct, sir.
It
was not to the Georgia Assembly, pardon me, it was to the Medical Association
Medical
of Georgia.
Association, okay. Be interested, would you be able to get that information to Ms. Morgan? And similarly, Dr. Mancini, some of the things that you mentioned, could you get that so that we could follow up on some of that? We do have one question, Representative Carpenter.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Dr. Harji, this is a quick question. Is there a possibility, I know that the medical profession is changing, obviously, and hospitals are becoming bigger and bigger, and doctors are becoming employees of hospitals. Would it be a possibility for hospitals to invest in this talent, give them that seed money with the idea that on the backside, I get almost like a baseball scenario where you've got single A. I'm going to finance you through the farm system, and then I get a couple of years, a little bit cheaper on the front side, and then after 2 or 3 years, you can sign the contract or go elsewhere type scenario. Is that a program that exists or something that could be developed?
Yes, sir, and thank you for bringing that up. I sat on the board of a major hospital in the city of Atlanta for 18 years, and I know that does happen, but it is mostly focused for nursing candidates. There is a certain amount of investment that goes into that. You need in-house attorneys and legal counsel to help process the immigration status for different physicians, but I feel very confident that can happen in hospital situations. They have bigger pockets, and they can do that. And certainly, if they invested, say, maybe $50,000 per candidate, that's nothing for a hospital. So yes, that is completely possible, and I think that would be something that has to happen from the powerful people over here.
Well, thank you for your time today. And we'll move on to our next presentation at this time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your story's very inspirational. Post-secondary education and building the global talent pipeline. Our presenters would make their way to the front, please. So are you going to moderate this, Darlene?
We are actually going to have them take it away.
Okay.
They will each share remarks, one after the other. Thank you.
All right. The floor is yours.
Well, hello, everyone. I actually met this committee at the first meeting of the Global Talent Committee in Clarkston. My name is Padia Mixon. I am the CEO of New American Pathways. I originally spoke to you sort of terms and issue setting, but I'm presenting in a different capacity today because prior to my role as CEO, I managed refugee education programs for 7 years. Both adult education and K through 12 after school programs for refugees and parent support. One job that I did hold was I was a vocational counselor for a program that helped refugees find advanced English training and enroll successfully in technical college. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit about that experience and some of the barriers that I think it may be possible to address about getting refugees into technical colleges, because I think we've talked a lot today about all of the great resources that technical colleges can provide. And so, do we want to just go into it or do introductions for it? Okay, we'll just go into it, because I know it's been a kind of a long day. So my job was to work with refugees to assess English, find English classes that would help people get ready, because even folks who came who were proficient in English often would go and take placement tests in schools and not meet the qualifications. So having those transitional English classes and then navigating the process of choosing what I'm going to study, how to do an application, what is financial aid, all of those things. And through that experience, I kind of found that everybody had individual barriers. My job was to go over, under, around, through, bust down barriers at an individual level, but there were barriers that you saw over and over again. And so that's what I wanted to address. The first thing is I feel like we covered a lot today about the lack of information about the process. And one of the first things that we had to do in our program was just sit down and talk about the education system in the United States and what was a technical college, what was a community college, what was the difference between a college and a university, how did Americans navigate these systems, and what does a diploma mean? What does a certificate mean? What does an associate's degree mean in terms of getting a job? This kind of information, and then what is the process that you go through? And so getting that information and what was possible and what was out there was a major challenge. It's completely different system than a lot of the countries that our clients came from. And so that was a big part of what we had to do, and having more centralized and better ways to get that information to people and being able to get information that's linguistically appropriate, it could be extremely helpful and was a big part of my job. Second was we found that while there were lots of English programs available in communities, you could graduate the highest level of what was available and not be able to get into the programs at technical colleges, or also even adult education programs like GED. I had a client that went through this circular process over and over of finishing the highest, at the same school, finishing the highest level of ESL provided, going to the GED program, taking the placement test, scoring low because their math and writing abilities weren't great, and be referred back to that same ESL program that they'd already graduated out of 2 or 3 times, that kind of circular, referral, because there was a gap between what was being provided in community ESL and the skills that were needed to get into a GED program. That same issue is there to go into technical programs. So I think on the first day we heard from Georgia Piedmont Technical College about bridge programs and industry-specific ESL, and these were one of the services we eventually provided in our program was a transitional ESL class to get people from where you are when you get out of level 6 ESL and where you need to be to get into technical school or college. And finally, there were just enrollment challenges around documentation. And when I say that, I don't mean immigration documentation. I mean documentation of your prior education, what was available and what could be considered by the schools that you were enrolling in. So a refugee fleeing a war-torn country, I ask people all the time to imagine you're fleeing for your life and how many people would stop and grab their diploma. Probably not very many. And then you're a country where you are you're considered an enemy of the state, or where a war has destroyed a lot of the infrastructure. How do you ever get proof? But what can you prove? Can you prove a long experience of working in the field? And can that be taken into consideration? What are the kinds of things that we can consider to get somebody into a technical program so they can get trained very quickly? And are there any alternatives? And if they're not, how can we better connect our immigrant and refugee population with GED programs and have success? And then finally, for the refugee population and for special immigrant visa holders in particular, one of the issues was we would have people who brought a lot of relevant skills and experience, maybe even had worked with the US government overseas, came into our office ready to enroll in school with a high level of English, and we had to wait 6-7 months to establish residency because refugees, they have to be in Georgia 12 consecutive months to establish refugees. And I know that is the rule for everyone, but refugees, the average amount of time they spend in a camp is 10 years. So spending a decade as a stateless person, a resident of nowhere, going through the security screening process for the US government to come here takes 2 years. So there is already a substantial wait. And so some states, there are 3 states in the past couple of years, have been waiving out-of-state tuition for refugees and SIVs for that first year in the country, so they can get into training programs very, very quickly and use their skills very quickly. I think that could be incredibly helpful because I did have the experience often where people would come in ready to go to school, and I would have to say, come back 6, 7, 8 months down the road. Once you get into school, English is your second language, you test into developmental studies, that can take 3 to 6 months. So you're talking 1.5 years, almost 2 years before you actually get into the technical program. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity right now because we have a large group of people who are coming from Afghanistan into Georgia who have English language ability, and many who have experience working with US companies or the US military who could get certified very quickly. We have an opportunity. And so those are the 3 things really that I saw over and over again. They're lots of challenges, but really it's about how do we get the information about how the process works and help people navigate through the process. How do we make sure that our English language programs are preparing people to enter adult education? And then how do we get people in quickly so we fill these jobs as quickly as possible? And how do we really consider all of the skills and experience for people who are coming out of an environment where maybe that high school diploma isn't so easy to get even if you've earned it? And that's my presentation, so I'm going to pass it on.
If I could ask a question quickly before we move on. I felt like you said one thing and then you kind of said another, so let me make sure I probably missed something. On residency requirements, I thought I heard you say it'd be nice if they could get residency quicker so they could get into school, and then you immediately follow that with what I thought I heard you say, how long it takes before they're ready to go to school, that it takes several years. What percentage of refugees would be ready to go to secondary education within the first year of them being here?
So there are different levels of experience that people bring in. So when somebody comes in English proficient and with previous experience in the field, those individuals are ready to go very quickly and can enroll. That's a portion
Gotcha.
of the population. There are other folks that are going to come in, and getting that English language is going to take time. And for those folks, that 12 months is not really going to be an issue,
Okay.
because it'll take longer than that to get your English level proficient. So it's about addressing the needs of two different groups of people.
Gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Chairman Committee, thank you for having us. My name is Gigi Pedraza. My real name is Hilda Rosa Pedraza Moron, but you can call me Gigi Pedraza. I'm the Executive Director of the Latino Community Fund in Georgia. We are a nonprofit organization. Okay, we're a nonprofit organization, Latino-led, immigrant-led, working to support immigrants, community members, English learners like me, as well as organizations led by a community, because we believe everyone should participate in democracy by volunteering, by voting, by supporting each other, by keeping elected officials accountable, building each other so that we are more effective and efficient in the work that we do, and also facilitating economic opportunity. I am, I think, part of the community we are discussing today. When I first came to Georgia 19 years ago, I had a master's degree in tourism planning and development. I had 2 executive certifications, a bachelor's degree in hospitality, and the only job I could get was at the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead, getting $5.75 an hour. I left because the hours were horrible, and I worked as in the kitchen for a caterer for a couple of years, peeling shrimp and making eggs for breakfast. I hate scrambled eggs. My husband knows it. And I peel shrimp because it was cheaper to pay me than to purchase peeled and clean shrimp. I am the executive director because I created myself, because I founded the organization, and because I picked the right man, I always say, because he had papers, and he has a good job, and I can afford to do this work, and my husband, feeds my kids. One of the reasons why I am here today is because I want to share with you a few facts. One is that, and these are all from the Trade Commission in Georgia, also from Chris Clark, CEO and President of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. So we know a few things. We know that, of course, Georgia is the 10th largest state in exports, actually outranks the entire nation in the percentage of exports. We also know that 60% of all the jobs in the future will require post-secondary education. We also know that 20,000 people died because of COVID in Georgia. And we know that there are great challenges to get jobs. So my intention today is to see how we could capitalize on what we already have, folks like me, to continue to contribute in Georgia. And so already we know that some of the top trade partners in Georgia are China, Mexico, Germany, Japan, Korea. At the same time, our schools have the 8th largest percentage of individuals and children that speak languages other than English. So you can see a match. Peyton mentioned about English as a second language. It means learning English. Do you all know that last year, 2020, only 9% of all the students involved in ESOL graduated, exited the program? We don't know why. Because there is lack of accountability on that program. A multicultural workforce means, yes, people that speak great English. And excuse me if I confuse, and I say chicken or kitchen, because 19 years later, I'm still learning. But so that is one of the opportunities. Gwinnett has already 550 international companies based there. I want to believe that it has something to do with Gwinnett also having over 100 languages spoken in the county and some connection with that workforce. We also know by Chris Clark that it is estimated that up to 25% of the workforce may be retiring in the next 12 to 24 months. So these are some of the things that I wanted to bring with you. I wanted to share a few ideas. One is, we know that the single most predictor or better predictor for educational success is parental engagement, right? And so what happens when You have between 127,000 and 144,000 students that speak languages other than English ready to be part of this global international trade economy. They want to study, right? We come here because we want to be better, because we want to give education to our children. We want them to have opportunities. What happens if the parents don't speak the language, don't understand what to do? So I do think a language access policy at the state level will create great opportunities, and it will also be a tool for accountability and responsibility and partnership between parents like me and administrators, educators, staff, teachers. I also believe that expanding access to scholarships and in-state tuition and financial aid for all Georgia students in K-12 is extremely important. It makes total sense. It's great fiscal policy. We already invest over $500 million every year in these students. Why not capitalize on that investment and ensure that they are ready to fill in these vacancies at whatever level they want? If they want to go to technical school, if they want to be professionals, if they want to pursue graduation or graduate degrees or academic degrees, that's great. Let them decide. Our job is to make sure that we facilitate access and opportunities. Something else is accountability, like I mentioned, for the ESOL programs. And so those are some of the, what I wanted to share with you. Parental success, poverty remains the biggest obstacle to higher education. And the last one, I make my notes here, is ensure access to all STEAM, STEM, and gifted programs. In Georgia, there's 11.6% students that are part of these gifted programs. Only 1.2% come from ESOL programs. There is absolutely no correlation between speaking more than one language and not being smart. In fact, I had to advocate for my own daughter in my own public school to make sure she is not removed. She was removed from the gifted math program. It was her and another student. So those are 4 recommendations. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions, Mr. Chairman, before I move on? Oh. All right. Well, thank you. Good morning. It's great to be with y'all again for the last day of this hearing. My name is Jaime Rangel. I am the Georgia State Immigration Manager for Forward.us. We are a national bipartisan organization that focuses on fixing issues in our broken immigration and criminal justice system. Specifically here in Georgia, we have an office that's solely dedicated in building bridges between communities and lawmakers to fix issues within our broken immigration system, both at the federal and state level. I'm here to talk to you about an issue we've heard already in every single hearing, which is in-state tuition for Daca recipients. You heard my personal story how I got here in my first hearing. We went to rural Georgia in my neck of the woods to Dalton State College. And we heard from leaders, the business leaders in that rural community, how tuition equity is extremely important. And in reality is, you've heard it throughout this whole process, this whole three hearings, that we have a labor shortage. We are the number one state in which to do business. But in order to do that, we have to be competitive. We have to think outside the box and pass policies that would ensure the next generation of Georgians that are going through our educational system can fill those jobs and fill those labor shortages. And tuition equity is, I think, it's an answer for that. I want to commend Representative Casey Carpenter, who introduced bipartisan legislation, HB 120, that will allow Daca recipients an opportunity rate to pay tuition, in-state tuition at our mighty fine institutions. We got some of the best institutions in the whole country, and I would say even the world. But unfortunately, we have individuals like myself who grew up in this country. We know no other country. This is our state, this is our home. And we can't get that higher education. And I want to be perfectly clear to the members of the committee that there's a lot of false information out there. We are not asking to pay a lower rate than any Georgia U.S. citizen. In fact, the proposed legislation that Representative Carpenter introduced does not do that. We're just asking for a fighting chance to pay in-state tuition in the only state we know, we grew up with. And I just want to share some facts about a new report that's coming out tomorrow that I'll be happy to share with this committee. But 21 states have already extended in-state tuition across the country. Texas legislation, and Florida is actually more open than the proposed legislation that Representative Carpenter have. It's both a Republican and Democratic issue that lawmakers have come together to solve. Right now, currently, Dreamers, Daca recipients, contribute $1.3 billion in spending power to Georgia's economy each year, and nearly $100 million in state and local taxes. If tuition equity was to pass, Dreamers graduating from technical colleges would pay back the state's investment within 10 years, and individuals earning a bachelor's degree would pay it back within 16 years via better paying jobs, higher tax contributions, and higher earnings power. And also, our report indicates that in-state tuition for Daca recipients and Dreamers could add as much as $10 million to the economy each year. I just wanted to share those facts, and Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to also share that right now there's 40,000 Daca recipients nationwide. 400,000 of those are parents of U.S. citizens, including me. I have a 19-month-old who I love and who drives me crazy every day. I just want y'all to know that I may be here representing Forward.us and their immigration portfolio, but I'm representing my family. I'm representing the future of my kid. I want to be a good example for him. I want to get that higher education degree and show them that it's possible. Whether he wants to go to technical school, start his own construction firm, or he wants to go to Georgia Tech or UGA and do great things in our state, I want to set that example. I look forward to working with every single member of this committee as we get closer to session during the session. I'm here to be a resource more than anything and answer any questions you may have. And I thank you, and I also want to commend all the great work you have done. Really, truly, this is awesome. Never have I, we're heading in the right direction. We are the #1 state in which to do business, and I promise you, with conversations like these, we're going to be the #1 state in the whole world to do business. So thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. May God bless you, and I guess, again, I'm here to be a resource and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jaime. Any questions from any of the committee members? Renee?
It's more of a statement, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right. Actually, two, if it's okay. Jaime, to your point about DACA and the in-state tuition, Mr. Chairman, this is something that before DACA actually became a word, I would imagine, I think it was 1998 or 1999, I was called by the AJC by a writer who was writing an article on in-state tuition. And he insisted on changing my words to that what I wanted was to allow illegal folks education. I said, no, what I want is to create an educated workforce. It's wrong. But this has been going on since 1998, 1999. That's the first one. The second one is when you mentioned, and I didn't think about that until you brought it up, Casey, right? Is that Katie, I'm sorry. When you mention how refugees or people fleeing their countries don't forget their documents, well, it reminded me how I left Cuba. I was a refugee as well. And 53 years ago, and 53 years, 3 months ago, and I've been here almost 7 years, so that gives you my age, I was playing across the street with a little fire truck. And armed police officers came to my house across the street. I didn't know what. And my mother yelled out my name, "Come run." And the little boy next to me said, leave your toys, you're leaving to America. I had no idea what America was. My point is, I walked in, we were given 15 minutes to leave our home. So, and you had to leave everything behind. So until I was 18, I had no country, no state. My passport was voided. And I don't remember what it was, but I had no birth certificate because it was left behind. And I don't recall why my mother needed it, but we had to go through the Catholic Church to call and get that documentation. And I don't recall what it was for, but I couldn't, whether it was for school or because I was too young, but my mom had to go through it. But to your point, you don't think about a birth certificate when you're fleeing a country. Yeah, and that's all I want to say, Mr. Chairman.
Good points. Good points. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Yes.
Just a quick comment. I, as an immigrant myself and working with immigrant and refugees, what Gigi just mentioned about parental education is so vital because I consider myself kind of learned and have seen the world, but still I struggle with my two high school students and their school system, and now they are getting to junior and senior and going to college preparation. What is out there is so hard for me to navigate, and I cannot imagine if with language obstacle, being an obstacle would be. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Sushma. I want to add a couple points of information. I think Chairman Choka asked around about scholarships and Pell Grants. So we know that 60%, for example, of all Gwinnett College students, this statistic is for English learners that are Hispanic, actually have Pell Grants because it's easier to access. It's a federal grant. There are some language access. However, only 10% have a Zell Miller grant. And oftentimes, right, a state grant. And oftentimes that is precisely because of language access. It's extremely complex for a parent and for a student. And for folks like me, for example, that I didn't go to school here, I don't understand if I don't get it in language necessarily the technicalities to access those scholarships and institutions. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Very helpful information today. So Darlene and Daniela, we'll let you guys close us out.
Make a microphone adjustment here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniela Perry. I'm the Vice President of the Georgia Chamber Foundation, and I'm so excited to be here today to kind of close us out and really appreciate y'all's efforts over the last few months to consider this issue in your time. I know you all have numerous commitments. So I hope at this point you'll expect a few numbers from me. Kind of just an overview of where the economy is at this point. Over 333,000 active job postings in the state of Georgia. Around 180,000 to 200,000 Georgians are currently unemployed. That's as of August 2021, which is the most available data. You'll see that our labor force participation rate has gone up since this time last year, which is great news. Certainly, though, 62% is not exactly where we'd like to be in terms of the number of individuals actively contributing in the workforce. The Georgia Department of Labor also recently did a survey, and I think I shared this at our September meeting, but I wanted to highlight kind of the number one reason that people said they weren't returning to work and why the employers weren't hiring applicants. And it's the fact that we can't find positions that I'm qualified for, and there's a lack of experience. So again, we're seeing this mismatch where you have individuals that say, I have skills, there's nothing available for me, and then employers saying, well, you don't have the skills that I need to do. So I know we've heard a lot about this skills mismatch, credentials, streamlining, but just want to highlight that this is something that's ongoing as we see our workforce shortages across the state. So I know we've heard a lot about higher education, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more today because we certainly see it as a vital component of our long-term workforce strategy. So on average, the state of Georgia spends over $100,000 on every student, and that's from K-12 that's from kindergarten through their 12th grade year. This is just the state and local FTE, so this isn't incorporating any federal dollars that are also brought down to the state to help with the costs of educating our kids in the K-12 system. So that's a lot of money for every individual student, and of course that doesn't account for any kind of additional services or things like that. That's just the basic state funding for students. We've also talked a lot about higher education in terms of the fact that you don't need a credential or you don't need a 4-year degree for every job that's available and to earn a really great living. And that's true, it certainly is, and there's always exceptions kind of to the rule in terms of what your earnings are based on your education level. However, it is a fact that if you have some kind of certification or credential, you will earn more. That can be a certificate, it can be an associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, you can see all the numbers, but earning a degree does increase your earnings. So when we're thinking about providing a higher quality of life, upward mobility for individuals so they can continue to grow in their communities, contribute more to our state's tax base. This is an important component because we know it does affect what they're able to earn. This is some data from the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. They have some really cool dashboards if you haven't been able to play around on them. And I know we've also included some additional information in your folders about the kind of where your community ranks on this. But for the class of 2018, we looked at where did these kids go? Did they enroll in college? You know, what happened? And you'll see that about 61% of graduates enrolled in higher education, either in the state of Georgia or outside the state of Georgia. After 2 years, you can see that that number has decreased to around 54%. So about 7-8 different points of folks. You can also see that we have almost 20% of those graduates are working without a credential, without enrollment. They've just completely stopped. And we have 17% of those graduates that we have no idea what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. Not comforting. So look at class of 2016, which we have a more complete picture because more data is available. They've been out of high school for a little bit longer. And I really want to highlight, the fact that the 63% and the 61% is pretty similar. But you'll see at this point, only about 24-25% of graduates are still enrolled in post-secondary. 27% at this point are working without a credential or enrollment, and only about 18% have actually completed their post-secondary path, whatever that may have been when that they enrolled, only 18%. And now we're up to 25% of those kids, we have no idea what they're doing. So we share this information because it's something that's incredibly important. We're thinking about the fact that we need kids to have some kind of certification, credential. We need some kind of tool for employers to know this is what you've learned, this is where you are in your stage. So if we have individuals that are going and they're getting a year of education here, a year of education there, they're spending time, they're investing money, they're not earning anything at the end of the day, so they don't have any credentials to say, okay, let me get into a better job here. They're continuing to spend more and more money on tuition, and they don't have anything to show for it. So not helpful for the Georgians that are going through this, and certainly not helpful for employers because we need those certifications and tools. It doesn't help if you've got 3.5 years of college. We need that 4-year degree. Affordability is a key reason why students do not enroll, persist, progress, and complete a higher education credential. We know that's a fact. And we've worked with some partners at Georgia State University as well. They've been real pioneers in this area, but there's less than a 30% chance that any kid that stops out will ever go back to higher education in that degree. That's not a percentage that I like. So you're seeing that once kids do stop, there's this huge barrier for them to return to those post-secondaries. It's not something that you can kind of start and stop. It is a huge hurdle mentally and financially to do that. And then, of course, the university system had some recent research that came up and just showed the huge impact of lifetime earnings and what this means to the state's economy, too. $59 billion is a lot of money, and our state certainly benefits from it. So I know we've heard a lot about in-state tuition for Daca recipients, and there's good reasons why. Of course, if affordability is a key concern, being able to create parity for students that have spent so much time in our K-12 education system, that $121,000 that the state has invested through their K-12 career, the state could, get some return on their investment eventually if these individuals are able to complete a degree, contribute to the workforce, buy a home in their community, and create a high quality of life for themselves and for their families. The other thing I wanted to mention is these last mile completion grants. And as I mentioned, the Georgia State University has been a real pioneer in this area with their Panther grant. It's something that they found they had an incredibly high number of students that were stopping out, that were attending class regularly, had good grades, no disciplinary issues, and they were stopping out due to around $900 or less. $900 was preventing them from completing a college degree, having a credential, and continuing their life. And again, you saw that these kids aren't going back to Georgia State. So Georgia State's also at this point losing money because they aren't able to keep these kids enrolled in college. Not good for the students, not good for Georgia State, and not good for the state of Georgia as a whole. So certainly they created this program, and it's funded privately at this point, but they give kids that are in their junior or senior year of college and meet all of those qualifications. They're on track to graduate, doing great, and they provide them a grant of $900 or less. And they have had incredible success in graduating these students. I think like 90% of them actually do graduate. And we can certainly follow up with some additional resources there, but the Technical College System of Georgia also has created a program through their foundation to do the same thing, and their awards are about $500 or less. So I really want, to just support the growth of these completion grants, because we know there are opportunities where you hit a gap, but if we're able to keep these kids and help propel them with a very small amount of money, we certainly think it's an opportunity to continue future growth. So those, I think, are all of my slides, but I'm happy to take questions or turn it over to Darlene.
I don't see any questions, Daniela,
Okay.
so thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. All right, so we're in the final stretch. I'm going to try to keep it short. This is the wrap-up portion. Global talent, the talent has arrived. We know that. We know Georgia has a deep pool of global talent. That's really the envy of the South. Many more people here who can contribute to our economy. And we know that we have businesses who need them. Workforce shortages, evolving technologies, and it's a perfect time to maximize the talent we have to meet the business needs that we have. And not only that, to really help all Georgians, however they got here, thrive. We know the problem is brain waste. Georgia loses $960 million in foregone earnings and $700 million in lost tax revenue each year because we have foreign-born Georgians in lower skilled jobs than they're able to handle. And the task is HR 11, and so I'm really thankful to everybody here. Task number 1 and 2 is completed, I would say. We have heard about the areas of need for Georgia businesses across all sectors. We've heard about solutions to maximize global talent in these different areas. And the next step is for you all to develop recommendations to strengthen Georgia's economy by enabling foreign-born Georgians to contribute to the fullest extent possible. So the next 3 slides, I just want to hit some of the recommendations from each of these categories that we've highlighted or the different panels have highlighted.
Darlene, can I interrupt
and
ask a question about your second slide?
Yep.
We've talked a lot about in-state tuition and helping foreign-born Georgians get a college degree, but then we see that 20% that have the college degree are either unemployed or employed in a low-wage job.
Yeah.
Help me with that.
Well, so, I think throughout these days we've had 2 different categories, I think, that have come out. And some are kids who have grown up in Georgia and are trying to enter, trying to get a college education and having some troubles. We also have people who are coming here from other countries that already have these skills.
I got you. They already have it.
And so this is really focusing on people like Dr. Riyadh, who we saw earlier, who isn't able to contribute, or what the healthcare.
I get it. I missed that point. Yeah.
No. I think it's been, it's sort of weaved through. So global talent is a broad term. But I think we have, for sure, we've heard from different sectors of the business community here about the need for global talent, and we have identified some solutions or possible solutions in these categories. So education and training, Again, expand tuition support. I know we've spoken a lot about tuition support for Dreamers. And Padia spoke a little bit about classifying refugees and special immigrants, including people who worked with the U.S. military in Afghanistan and Iraq, as in-state students when they get here. They haven't lived in any other state. They've been told to be reset by the U.S. that they will be resettled in Georgia as their first state. So Georgia is their home state. And when they come here, they can be classified or should be classified as in-state students and get going on their education right away. And other states are starting to do that same thing. Remove unintended bars to admission, and we talked about that, not having your papers with you, meaning your diploma, your transcript. What are some alternatives to just get over that hurdle? And we've talked a little bit about different kinds of things that the college systems can do. And then this, of course, has come up quite often. Invest in English learning. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning of this process and we talked about today was advanced or vocation-specific ESL programs. So we know students are getting through the highest level of ESL to enter adult ed, and that's not enough. Either they don't have advanced level or they don't have the vocabulary for the specific trade that they're trying to enter. Cybersecurity is one that's been a very hot and growing industry in Georgia, and now Piedmont Technical College is working on a bridge program just for that. And we could do that across the state, and we could get over some of those English language hurdles. Today we heard a little bit about issues arising below the post-secondary level, trying to get K through 12 students, and this again is probably students who are growing up in Georgia, into college by making sure that they have ESL, that their parents have access to the support they need in the languages they need so they can support their K through 12 kids. The other thing we heard about today was experience in the STEM industry, and I should have it on here, the idea of having mentorships or apprenticeship programs in the business community and having some state incentives for something like that. And the other thing I would add here from today was the awareness component, right? We know Georgia does a lot already. There are dual enrollment programs. There are the Hope Scholarship. It's amazing. But there seems to be some sort of disconnect and need for awareness raising. Occupational licensing, we spent some time on that, and that's been a recurring theme. Last time we talked about occupational licenses for the skilled trades. We know construction, manufacturing, there's a tremendous need for skilled tradespeople, like plumbers, for instance. And it's very difficult for people who were trained as plumbers in other places to enter the plumbing profession here in Georgia. And there's been some state, SB 45 is sitting in the House Regulatory Committee right now that would allow some level of reciprocity for people who trained in another state. But there's nothing for people who trained in another country. And so, we are losing people like clients we have in Clarkson who have been welders on, U.S. military bases, and they come here and they can't be a welder, and they're working in a grocery store or a restaurant. So perhaps we could expand legislation like SB 45 to really apply for all qualified Georgians, whether they've got their training in another country or in another state. Facilitating pathways for foreign trained doctors and dentists and counselors is probably one of the most urgent needs we're seeing right now in Georgia. There has been all sorts of activity nationwide around this and different approaches, including associate doctors, subsidizing residencies. It's a really broad range of things that can work, and I would urge this committee to make this an urgent, one of the top priorities is to figure out how to get this wealth of talent into rural Georgia and other parts of Georgia where we need doctors and dentists and counselors. And I can also, I know you have asked for some of the prior bills and resolutions that the panelists spoke about. I'm also happy to share more on that, on medical licensing as well, if you'd like. I will note that, during COVID, there were temporary medical licenses were offered to foreign trained officials in a number of states. When New Jersey offered a temporary license, they had more than 1,000 foreign-trained doctors apply to provide care for those people in New Jersey under a temporary license. Now, New Jersey does not now have a permanent pathway, which is frustrating, but that just shows you the demand. We're not just talking about Georgians already here with those qualifications and training, but we would attract people to Georgia who could fill the gaps that we so desperately need to fill. Removing unnecessary, outdated immigration-related requirements in our licensing scheme. Again, we had the example of people who provided security for our U.S. military in war zones, and they cannot work in law enforcement in Georgia. They can be lawful permanent residents who've been here for years and years and years in the citizenship process, but they can't serve their communities on law enforcement. A citizenship requirement doesn't seem to be serving us very well in that respect. Finally, there's a whole bunch of things that have come up, and other states have found this to be really a fruitful area, is helping navigate the licensing process. And we know there's everything from just developing some online licensing guides, which have been very effective in other states, updating the licensing website. I don't know if any of you have been on that website recently with the Department Secretary of State to make it more easily accessible and to have language access. Or to actually assign an FTE, one or two, to a department in Georgia's, in the state government, to assist skilled professionals arriving from other countries and coordinate some of these global talent ideas and policies for developing and integrating these professionals. And we've seen that be very successful under Republican governors in Michigan and in Ohio, for instance. I did want to add, because I know this question came up, Dr. Harji was asked how many immigrant and refugees with health degrees are underemployed or unemployed in the country, and it's 263,000, according to a report in 2020. 263,000 healthcare professionals on the sidelines in Georgia. Small business development, we touched on that, particularly in the first committee, but also today. There's a possibility to incentivize entrepreneurship programs in different languages. Again, there's a lot of call for simplifying the process. A one-stop website, whether it's for licensing or small business startups. This is a recommendation that actually the Governor's Georgian's First Commission has made similar to that, except they did not include making it friendly to all Georgians with some language access and other kinds of support. And finally, childcare has been an issue across all of our meetings, and there's a real opportunity to support childcare entrepreneurs and expand access to childcare. So there's a desire in the refugee and immigrant community to start these micro enterprises so people can have a place to safely bring their children and they can go to work. And a lot of these folks prefer in-home types of family childcare rather than a big facility, and certainly with someone who speaks their language or knows their culture. And so there are groups working on this. How do we draw down on federal and state funds to support these micro enterprise childcares in the underserved communities, and offering some more child development support in the technical schools. That is all I have, and I tried to be very fast. I know I spoke maybe too fast, but Wes always nudges me when I'm up here. So please, if you have anything any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Darlene. Any
Yep.
questions for? I think we're good. You can tell when it's toward the end of the meeting and people are getting hungry, questions go away. Just, where's the food is probably the only question on a lot of people's minds. Well, thank y'all for being here today, and the committee will now be looking at all these recommendations and hopefully coming with some recommendations from both a legislative perspective and a policy perspective to address some of the issues that have been brought up. Thank you, and we're dismissed.